Paul Bragg, The Shocking Truth About Water and Salt. From the authors. We've written this book for you. It can be your ticket to a healthy life. As nutrition professionals, we have joined forces for a common goal of helping everyone to be healthy and live longer. And scientific nutrition shows the way to such a life, the way of nature, the only reliable way to have a body without disease and early old age. This book will teach you how to work with nature, not go against it. Therapists, dentists and others involved in your treatment try to correct mistakes, although they don't always succeed. Many of them speak well of our scientific approach to healing the body with natural products and other ways of long-term health at any age. To make our approach more widespread, faster, we wrote this book. The statements that we cite on the pages of this book are taken from scientific works, well-known works of physiology, biology and therapy by authors who lived both in ancient times and relatively recently. I, Paul Bragg, have been involved in scientific methods of ensuring a healthy life for over 50 years. They say the results I've gotten are great, the tips are safe and helpful for everyone who uses them. My first assistant has always been my daughter Patricia. We, the authors of this book, don't claim that the approach we have developed can help with any disease. This book doesn't offer cures for disease. We also don't recommend special diets or foods, the use of which can cure the disease. Nor is this book product propaganda. Here I, Paul Bragg, health promoter, specialist and teacher, and my daughter Patricia Bragg only express my opinion on the problems in the book. Some professionals who are considered experts in this field may disagree with the statements made here. This happens if they take other approaches. However, we wrote this book based on the facts we gathered from our research in the field of human health. Paul Bragg, life extension specialist. Shocking truth about water. The most noble substance in the nature is water. Pindar. I dedicate this book to all people on earth so that they learn to live correctly and enjoy their bodies, which shouldn't suffer from pain, grow old, but should enjoy a healthy and happy life full of strength and tranquility. Appreciation. As with the rest of the books, both finished and uncompleted, I'm very grateful to my daughter Patricia Bragg for her understanding and assistance in research, proofreading and error checking, reprinting works and evaluating them. Paul Bragg and his daughter Patricia splash in mineral waters in desert hot springs. They believe that sanitariums with mineral bathing are very useful, but they don't share their opinion about the benefits of drinking mineral water, although this is practiced everywhere. Water is an essential component for the survival of humans and animals. In terms of its value, it ranks second after oxygen. A person can live without food for no more than 90 days. However, depriving him of oxygen, death will occur in a few minutes. A person can live without water for several days. In this dependence of people on water, there is an irony of nature. A person can hardly last more than 72 hours without water, but it's water in most cases that is the main cause of aging. Water not only causes an early weakening of the body's functions, but also causes a lot of suffering to a person due to the saturation of magnesium, calcium carbonates and other inorganic substances harmful to the body. After reading this book, you'll learn why humans and animals die before the deadline left by nature. Forward to the American edition. Reception of ordinary water threatens with poisoning with hazardous chemicals. In this book, Bragg describes with the precision of a scientist the danger caused by drinking ordinary water containing chemicals and inorganic minerals used in everyday life, as well as drinking table salt. Bragg explains why chlorination of water used for plumbing is not as harmless as it might seem. Remember that chlorine, chlorine dioxide and other chlorine compounds are strong oxidants and bleaching agents. If the level of chlorination of drinking water is such that it tastes unpleasant and smells bad, then some of these protective substances can enter the gastrointestinal tract and destroy beneficial bacteria, thereby depriving us of the essential vitamins that these bacteria formed. In one of his works, Paul talks about artificially fluoridated drinking water, which is used to feed 80 million guinea pigs. This is an unprecedented experiment for nations less risk-averse than Americans. Here Bragg talks about how inorganic salt causes various diseases in the human body. He's convinced that he's managed to find a reason for which the number of hospitals, mental hospitals, medical colleges, doctors and health rehabilitation specialists is now increasing. Paul Bragg believes that he's found the answer to the questions of why so many people die from heart attacks, arthritis, kidneys failure before the expiration of their natural lifespan. He explains why there are many children with disabilities nowadays. From the beginning of the book to the last page, the reader will be chained to it by chains of interest. This is due to the fact that the author doesn't limit himself to dry theory, but gives useful practical advice. This book is essential for everyone interested in maintaining health. The book shows you how to become healthier, younger, happier and more energetic. Read this book and learn about some amazing facts about your health and the chances of enjoying life for many years. Introduction. Pure water, H2O, is one of the most essential conditions for human health. The most important factors for a healthy human life are clean air, clean water in which there are no chemicals and inorganic minerals, natural food, how natural it can be in the polluted world in which we have to live. Water is the most important substance on Earth. We can say that water is also one of the most informative business cards of our planet. Water can exist in three forms: liquid, solid and gases. It was chosen at one time as a unit for measuring for specific gravity for all substances. Only plays an important role in ensuring the circulation of natural elements over the surface of the planet. A person must have normal water, otherwise he will face death. For example, a sailor surviving a shipwreck. Around it stretches an ocean of water, but salty. And if he doesn't get fresh water, then after some time he will die. Or the traveler is lost in the desert. And if he doesn't find water, dehydration and death await him. But before the end comes, thirst mocks him, making him suffer. Some animals, such as rabbits and hares, which feed mainly on grass and plant foods, which contain up to 85% of water, never drink ordinary water if they can find natural food. And breast milk contains up to 87% water. Juicy fruits and vegetables have almost the same proportion of water in the total weight. A person who eats about 1.5–2 kilograms of fresh fruit per day, in addition to about 250 grams of solid components, receives at least 1.5 liters of distilled water. I'm convinced that water is the most important substance on Earth. Without it, life from plants to humans would cease to exist. Constant water quantity. Water is absolutely non-destructible substance. Some scientists believe that since the first water on Earth helped shape our planet, the total amount of water on it has not changed one drop. Currently, there is no less water on Earth, but no more water since the creation of the world. After the surface of the Earth was covered with primary water, volcanic eruption began to eject masses of solid rocky formation from the depths of the planet. This process lasted for millions of years. And for millions of years, emission combined to form parts of the Earth's land, which contributed to the creation of a certain system of continents as we see the Earth at present. There is water almost everywhere on Earth, only in some places it's more and others it's less. Almost all of the water is in the oceans, and only about 3% is in the layer starting 5 kilometers below the surface and ending at the altitude of 10 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And this 3% refers to fresh water, and only 0.3% is available. Theoretically, water resources are inexhaustible, since with rational use they are renewed during the water cycle. But water consumption is growing. At a rate there is in short supply in many countries. Water pollution is a major hazard. The flow of water slows down the Earth's rotation every 1,000 years by a fraction of a second. It's likely that 1 billion years ago the length of a day on Earth was only 4 hours. Most likely at first our planet was a bunch of hot gases, but as it cooled down the atoms of hydrogen and oxygen combined with each other, forming a hazy consistency. This fog then began to condense and rush to the center of the planet as it rains, which, cooling down, formed a semblance of a primary relatively solid film on the surface of the ancient ocean. Thus, it was water that was and remains the main builder of the Earth's surface. It controls the climate on our planet, provides people with food and a huge amount of energy. Approximately 4/5 of the weight of living creatures and plants is water, which performs or provides them with various internal functions. Water penetrates everywhere. Until now, we don't fully understand the nature of the molecular forces of a drop of water. After such a drop enters the root system of a large tree, it begins to move upward, leaving behind a chain of small water dust grains, its traces. When this thinner drop researches a leaf growing at the top of the tree, the wind helps to evaporate and carries it back into the sky, where it then helps to form a cloud in which rain begins. And sometimes blown up by the wind to the altitude of 10 kilometers, this drop purified and combined with billions of other such drops, falls again perhaps this time on the apple orchard. But the next time fate may be completely different, and it'll fall on the heads of the sailors suffering shipwreck, or fall on an island where there is no fresh water. Or maybe it will end up in the Amazon lands and help germinate a grain that lacks only a drop of water to begin the process of transformation into a plant. But it takes over 65 million liters of water to cover up 1 square mile with a 1-inch layer of water. A drop of water after falling to the surface of the earth in less than a minute can evaporate again and go to the sky. But another way can await her. For example, it can get into underground, hidden deep under the Sahara Desert, where there are about 150 cubic miles of water waiting for its fate. Here a drop can take hundreds of years to get to the surface and again, having turned into vapor, set off on a journey across the earth. Flows of hot mineral water under the Californian desert. A river of hot mineral water flows just 100 meters below the surface of the Californian desert where my house is located. To get to it, people dig wells and get water with a temperature of 80–85 degrees. In these places, water before reaching the surface spends hundreds of years underground. Then people cool it down to a temperature that a person can withstand, after which it enters the treatment pools and gives relief to patients suffering from various diseases. These mineral waters have a pronounced therapeutic effect that people come here to improve their health in the warmth. I can't complain about any pain, but I always found time to splash in hot mineral baths and get a boost of vivacity. That is why I build a house in these places, and when I want to take a break from the hustle and bustle, I come here, to my house in the desert. In our city there is a special hospital for disabled children, which has become famous for the miracles of healing of its patients. When I see happy faces of sick children joyfully bathing in pools with hot mineral water, my heart becomes lighter. Even those young patients who can't walk will soon learn to swim in pools, and this helps them gain confidence that their small bodies can become stronger. I've seen water therapy combined with physical treatment, led by a friend of mine, work wonders. For many years, Dwight Eisenhower, later one of the Presidents of the United States, was a member of the board of directors of this hospital. The oceans, which accounts 97.2% of the total volume of water, during high tides and as a result of the action of constant waves, which are helped by the wind, crushes rocky coast, bringing the debris to sand over time. Even where volcanic eruptions throw lava into the ocean, after some time it's ground into sand by water. This is why the sand on the beaches of Hawaii and Tahiti is black. The ocean always wins land battles. Geologists said that soon the peaks of the highest mountains will be below sea level, and the cycle of active volcanic activity will begin again. In the distant past, the ice massifs were so vast that the sea level was 10 meters lower than the present. Then between France and Great Britain it was possible to travel by land. There were no water barriers between Siberia and Alaska. Maybe this explains some of the unsolved facts of the migration of people in the past. The Niagara Falls commits a slow suicide. Several years ago, engineers temporarily diverted the waters of Niagara Falls to another channel to develop ways to prevent coastal erosion. The experience showed that humanity will not be able to cope with this problem. Every second, Niagara Falls dumps about 30 million liters of water down. In less than 20 million years, the waterfall will approach moving back to lake area and transform into a riverbed. The famous oceanographer Columbus Iceland wrote, "The sea produces almost as much nutrients as the land, but man takes only about 1% of the wealth." Yes, oddly enough, we are much more interested in the vastness of space than the wealth of the sea depths close to us. Let's say again, a drop of water is an unfamiliar and wonderful world that we haven't yet explored. Man cannot live without water. Our existence depends on the availability of water, but no one shouldn't assume that this statement doesn't require proof and that one can believe in it. After reading this book, you will learn that the value of water, about its health benefits, about how you can live cheerfully and joyfully with its help. The 5 basic health builders: air, water, sunlight, food, exercise. In terms of importance for humans, water is in second place after oxygen. On average, the human body contains about 43 liters of water. Every day during breathing, during sweating, with urine and feces, approximately 3.5 liters of fluid are excreted from the body. It's water that controls the temperature, which is in normal state is 36.6 degrees. If the body temperature rises, we are thrown into a fever. If it falls below, the state becomes lethargic and bad. Water makes up 92% of the content of human blood and almost 98% in intestinals, gastric juices and saliva. Unfortunately, we often see people with disorders caused by imbalance of water in the body. They have dry, old, pale skin. They have dry hands, many wrinkles on their cheeks and around their eyes. And in the eyes you will see that they are, as it were, covered with a veil. It seems that such people need a squint hard to see something. Many people experience constipation, which is another sign of dehydration. Others suffer from a burning sensation in the urethra when urinating, which is also associated with the imbalance in water balance. Salt is a health destroyer. One of the reasons for this imbalance is the use of salt and salty foods, since salt retains water in the body, causing swelling due to the saturation of the body tissues with water. On the street, sometimes there are children whose fullness look grotesque. Plump bodies of children are more typical for people who have reached the middle of life. Even adults will often see puffy faces, swollen arms and legs, huge bellies, swollen ankles and feet. The amount of water required depends on the ambient temperature, climate, activities and human health. After you drink a glass of water, it enters the stomach. Part through its walls enters the bloodstream and is absorbed, and the remaining water enters the intestines, helping it to digest the food eaten. This makes it easier for food to enter the bloodstream. The normal state of consumed water is a natural defense against viral infections called pneumonia, severe cough, measles and others. If there is Hong Kong flu in the country, doctors usually advise you to stay on bed and drink more water. If the tissues and cells of the body receive the required amount of water, they are able to attack viruses. But if water is scarce, they become dry and lose their ability to withstand attacks. Therefore, always remember the importance of water in the body, which is required for normal functioning. Don't forget that water is a vital component of all fluids, an integral part of your tissues, cells, lymph, blood. It's water that converts food into a liquid state that transfers it throughout the body. It dissolves toxins from the body and removes them from the body. In order for the mucous membranes to remain soft and the filtration of substances through them is not accompanied by unnecessary friction, a sufficient amount of water is also required. Water is needed to process food. The stomach acts like a stone crusher, processing food that enters it and making it porridge. Water washes toxins from the body. One of the most important functions of water in the body is to flush out toxins and salts from the body. Unfortunately, people all over the world consume too much salt. Just a few hundred years ago, the inhabitants of many countries didn't know what salt was. The Japanese are among the most active consumers of salt, sodium chloride. A Japanese farmer who lives to be 60 eats about 60 grams of salt per day. During this time, he forces his kidneys to filter out almost a ton of salt. The Americans are keeping up with the Japanese. Not only do they absorb salt, but they also eat a variety of salty foods such as ham, fried sausages, lunch food, fatty beefs, chips and other high-salt foods. Not surprisingly, heart disease is the #1 killer in America. People who are barely 30 years suffer from high blood pressure, kidney problems, arthritis and loss of elasticity of the arteries and veins. The right amount of water and the right formulation help to lower high blood cholesterol levels. You of course haven't forgotten that water in the body is a liquid state. I'm convinced that the right water is nature's greatest gift and the best tonic. Throughout my career as a nutritional and health consultant who has worked with many television actors, I have found that I can convince any celebrity to use fluids to help them keep their faces fresh and slimmer than people who drink regular water. Adequate water keeps the cells of the body in good condition and prevents dehydration. In this case, there are fewer wrinkles on the face and neck, and the whole body retains its youth and health longer. The importance of water for improving health. People who consume water of the required quality, distilled water, fresh fruits, vegetables and juices, and in sufficient quantities, the circulatory system functions better, the most important condition for a healthy life. I'm convinced that normal water also helps to improve the function of the brain. It promotes more productive and accurate thinking. The explanation is simple. 50 billion of your brain cells are 70% water. I believe that sometimes a vicious circle is formed. An extremely nervous and anxious person goes so far into his problems that he forgets the importance of drinking water of normal quality or other liquids with similar properties. Instead, they stun themselves with alcohol and exacerbate depression by filling their stomach with harmful substances and not helping to get rid of them. As a result, in addition to nervousness and depression, he gets stomach pains, heart palpitations and other troubles. But instead of resorting to normal water, such people begin to consume large quantities of aspirin, smoke many cigarettes and use other stimulants. Remember, your nerves needs enough water to function. There is evidence that a person suffers greatly from a lack of water, but you can always help your health by using natural liquid. I wrote this book so that you know the truth and can choose the right water for you and the amount needed for the body. You just need to strive to take advantage of this gift of nature, allowing you to get health. And the basis for it will be knowledge that allows you to get rid of many diseases and restore health. How this amazing book may be useful for you. A health message 100 years ahead of our time. Once you found out what kind of water is good for humans, amazing transformation will happen to you. Paul Bragg is convinced of this. He managed to discover the simplest secret of health. Millions of people consider Bragg the father of fitness, a healthy lifestyle that includes a balanced diet. In his secret, he pays special attention to water, since a person sharply reacts to a violation of the water balance and to the water that he has to drink all his life. Ask yourself questions. How can I stop chemicals and inorganic minerals from hardening my brain and body? How can I prevent stones from forming in my kidneys, gallbladder and bladder? How can I prevent arteries, veins and capillaries from becoming abnormally stiff and brittle? How can I prolong my youth? How can I delay the onset of old age? To get answers to these questions, please read this book. Universal Liquid of Death. Water, water. There is so much of it around, but very little if we consider it as drinking water. Indeed, although there are billions of liters of fresh and clean water on Earth, there is not much of it when it comes to the ability to water humanity. Water is a chemical compound in the form of H2O, one of the most abundant substances on the surface of our planet. In nature, it occurs in solid, liquid and gaseous states of aggregation in the form of ice and snow, water and steam. Water composed of oxygen and hydrogen is found in all natural products. It, as a universal solvent, can't be replaced by another substance capable of ensuring the body's ability to perform all physiological functions. The human body needs water, but it doesn't need any but chemical pure water, which is 100% oxygen and hydrogen. This pure water can be obtained from two pure sources. It's found in fresh fruits and vegetables. Nature distills water in them naturally. The second way to get it is vaporization. The plague, the Black Death as it was called, spread throughout Europe in the 14th century and caused the death of the third of the continent's population. Contaminated water was the cause of this disease. And even today, in many places in Europe, it's very difficult to obtain potable water. Therefore, people have to use bottled water already in bottles. And every experienced traveler getting to new places always resorts to just this way of quenching his thirst. Most of the water currently used is contaminated. Now it's almost impossible to find rivers, lakes, which at least a small extent would not be polluted. Consequently, the resulting water has to be chlorinated to make it more or less suitable for consumption. However, does the water really becomes more usable after this treatment? You may be aware that water treatment plants use inorganic chlorine to counter-react bacteria in polluted water. Alum and other inorganic minerals are also used for water filtration and purification. But the worst component that drinking water passes through is inorganic sodium fluoride, which is unfortunately present in toothpaste. In my opinion, this is the worst thing that can be done with water that enters the body. Organic or inorganic minerals. Let me give you a short lecture from which you will learn about the properties of two types of minerals, organic and inorganic. Inorganic water cleaners such as chlorine, alum and sodium fluoride are inert. This means they viewed from the point of view of drinking water consumers, they cannot be absorbed by living tissues of the body. The chemical composition of our bodies includes 90 organic components of mineral origin. They come from substances that are alive or were. When we eat an apple or a fresh fruit or vegetables, the substance is a living, according to biochemistry, substance, and it remains alive for some time after it been plucked. The same can be said for animal products such as meat, fish, milk, cheese and eggs. It's organic substances that provide us with a healthy life. If we're thrown onto an inhabited island on which not a single plant grew or no living creatures were found, then we would be doomed to death. Even if the soil under our feet contains 16 inorganic minerals, this won't help us, we cannot absorb them. Only plants have the ability to extract inorganic minerals from the earth. But a person can receive the necessary strength in this way. When I traveled in China, the inhabitants of one of the regions suffered greatly from the drought, which led to a lack of food. I saw with my own eyes how people who were almost mad with hunger warmed simple earth and ate it, hoping to extract at least some useful substances from it. But after a while they died in agony, because none of them could get a necessary substance, even eating kilograms of earth from inorganic minerals. For many years I regularly hear that there are some mineral-rich waters. But what minerals are people talking about when they claim it, organic or inorganic? People and plants have different chemical compositions. I repeat again, only plants can convert inorganic minerals into organic ones. When you read this book, you will know how much harm inorganic minerals do to the body and especially the brain. Sometimes, due to the lack of eating habits, some children and young animals eat the earth. Very often this leads to dangerous disease, and not due to microbes in the ground. Inorganic substances become the cause of the incapacitation of the body, sometimes fatal. When I was younger, when I lived on the farm in Virginia, our family raised daily cattle. We were regularly visited by merchants offering food for our animals. I remembered well how my father brought a product labeled high mineralized animal feed. We thought that it included a lot of calcium, magnesium and other minerals that helps cows to be strong and give a lot of milk. But the food we bought was oversaturated with components of inorganic sources, calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate and the like obtained from crushed limestone. When we started mixing it with the regular organic food, our animals didn't want to eat it. Their natural instinct forbade them to accept the alien delicacy. As we later learned, the seller got it for free. Hazardous inorganic minerals in drinking water. As we said, chlorine, alum and other substances are added to drinking water for purification. Often other hazardous substances are used in addition to them, such as calcium carbonate and its chemical compounds, magnesium carbonate, potassium carbonate, etc. You must remember that a person needs only oxygen and hydrogen, which together act as a natural solvent for substances entering our body, which can't process inorganic minerals. However, the body constantly needs a supply of water. Where can it get them from? After all, even untreated water comes from sources, etc., almost always contains some of the inorganic minerals that we talked about. There is such an irony of fate. The very liquid without which a person can't live for more than 74 hours, so as not to fall into a coma, itself contains precisely those substances that cause early aging of people. Currently, the largest aluminium companies are trying to pass water through sodium fluoride. If you find out, it turns out that the process of obtaining aluminium is accompanied by phenomena that are dangerous for our lives. Fluorine, deadly poison. Millions of people in recent years have been subjected to psychological attacks organized by aluminium companies trying to convince everyone that adding sodium fluoride to water and toothpaste reduces the rate of tooth decay. Therefore, 80 million Americans now receive a daily dose of this substance along with their drinking water. It was fluorine, that gangster of the chemical industry, that allowed nuclear weapons to emerge. In my time, almost the only way to extract the uranium-235 isotope from the huge masses of the uranium-238 isotope was to run uranium hexafluid through the thickness of semi-permeable membranes in which the required isotope was accumulated. Nuclear chemists named the original omnious product hex, and this hex showed its temper, destroying water pipelines and pumping systems, creating a danger of radioactive contamination of vast territories. Millions of Americans drink sodium fluoride in their drinking water and brush their teeth with fluoridated toothpaste. In combination with sodium, fluorine is not destructive, like hex. But how can we talk about safety if in higher concentration it's used as a rat exterminator and the most powerful pesticide? However, this horrible substance, which Americans must take by mouth with water every day, was introduced into practice by a government order that water must contain 1 and 2 units per million units of liquid. The saddest thing that this approach is still defended by the Ministry of Health as absolutely safe for humans, but every qualified chemist knows the whole truth about the absolutely safety of fluorine compounds. They're well aware that fluorine is very dangerous if it gets inside the body. Where have you seen animals needs this element? Man has lived for thousands of years without consuming fluorine or compounds. A sadness story about water fluorination. In 1939, the Research Institute in the eastern United States sent a biochemist on a business trip to look for ways to use waste sodium fluorine after aluminium cookware. At the time, 45 other industries also had such waste problems, with bricks, ceramics, tiles, refined petroleum products, and most of the newly launched Atomic Energy Commission enterprises. Many of them incurred high costs in lawsuits brought against them by owners of farms or agricultural land affected by waste poisoning. The cost of removing waste from storage sites was high, and some had an idea if this byproduct could be turned into a profitable business. The specialist sent to find a solution to the problem turned out to be a cunning person. He proposed an idea promising a profit. Shouldn't industrial waste be dissolved in drinking water? I must say that this scientist didn't have a medical education and no one conducted a single test to determine the effect of sodium fluoride on chemical processes in the body. However, companies for which the problem of recycling industrial waste in the form of sodium fluoride was a headache happily agreed. The next step was easier for them. After processing the idea, the companies passed it to the advertising agencies, who began to target millions of people, forming the belief that the greatest discovery in medicine has been made. American society is gullible and easy to tell stories like this. If they're taught in a scientific way, they swallow them with pleasure. Advertisers have spent a lot of energy ranting about the benefits of sodium fluorine in water, which supposedly prevents tooth decay in children. Then this motive was picked up by the trade. A remedy was found to fight tooth decay. However, every thinking person knows that the cause of this disease is poor nutrition, especially the consumption of large quantities of white sugar. Poor diet, sugar and sugar-based foods, soda, candy and the like are the main causes of tooth decay affecting many Americans today. The problem was aggravated by the fact that big business and trade unions quickly found a common language in this matter. Remember that these structures control the mainstream media through economic leverage, through advertising funds. And business, along with trade unions, with the help of newspapers, radio and television, brainwashed most of the American population, convincing the benefits of sodium fluoride. And any opponent who tried to argue the opposite or ask questions about such treatment of water or toothpaste would immediately face obstruction and accusation of stupidity, distortion of facts, pure information and retrogradness. Most doctors were forced to surrender under the onslaught of these powerful forces for fear of discrediting their profession. But you can always find honest and incorruptible specialists who fight for their beliefs, even if they look ridiculous in the eyes of most people. I must say that the state authorities which were prescribed the fluorination of water also came under pressure. Big businesses and big trade unions, which can act like a mafia if necessary, didn't accept any objections from the authorities. They knew how to convince the state authorities. We live in a very sick world. Read this book carefully. More than 50 years of work have been invested in it to find and process information on the problems under consideration. I'm an independent researcher whose main goal is truth. I act alone, my superiors don't control me, organizations don't dictate what I need to do. I don't have an owner whose will I have to carry out. Therefore, I can partially convey to you the whole truth of this issue in this book. I'm the author of this work, a scientist, a man of science on how to help people, while observing the laws of natural life to be healthy for many years. I spend a significant part of my time in the laboratory studying the essence of life, but the same amount of time I'm outside, observing and studying the life of people, trying to understand why they get sick, why they early age, and why they leave this life prematurely. Having done this work, I became convinced that the person himself is to blame for his illnesses and himself shortens life, because he resorts to the most common solvent, water, which is helped by tobacco, and powerful stimulants such as alcohol, coffee, tea, cola, soft drinks. This is also facilitated by the use of white sugar and products that contains it, refined white flour and products from it, white rice, salted products. Overeating and eating dead, demineralized food, a large amount of foods oversaturated with fats, their components clog the arteries and channels for the passage of sticky cholesterol, also contribute to the destruction of health. Poor eating habits and a lack of exercise, sunlight and fresh air contributes to poor body condition. Currently, 97% of people can't boast a good physical fitness. Overeating affects 65% of the population. In addition, many people use the wrong diet, as a result of which they often experience general weakness and get tired quickly. All day they drag their little obedient body on the ground, and in the evening they can't fall asleep without sleeping pills. In the morning they wake up with difficulty, and again they need invigorating remedy to continue their dull path. As a result of physical fatigue and weakness, such people are less active than healthy people. They don't have pills to make them really work. Gradually, the internal organs and appearance come into line with each other. They become flabby and lethargic. The most important disease at the present time has become the physical unpreparedness of people for normal stress. Let's take a closer look at our boys and girls. The first thing we'll pay attention to is the amount of drugs they take. Never in history have people under 30 years old used such doses. Why do our youth need pills and potions? The answer can be obtained quickly if you analyze the food they eat. There is a train of interesting stories behind each dish. Such food can provide the body with the necessary substances, and the culinary ignorance of many people leads to attempts to obtain the energy required by their body from harmful stimulants such as tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. But the time will pass, and it's this generation, most of which is accustomed to the use of potent drugs, will become parents. One can only repeat, we live in a sick society, and the state of affairs doesn't improve and becomes worse and more dangerous. We rarely think about our health. Many people remember their health only when they have parted with it, or will soon lose it. In the old Anglo-Saxon language, the word health meant strength. This was understood by our ancestors who lived in ancient times, which is reflected in the famous Latin saying, "A healthy mind in a healthy body," briefly conveying the essence of health. We have to add the word health, good, because we hear other variants, poor health, etc., crossing out the meaning of this word. The wonderful mechanism of our body. If the shell of the body were transparent and we could look inside ourselves every morning, we would see how the lungs deliver air to the corners of our body, supplying them not only to individual organs but also to all cells. We'd see how the heart receives blood through the complex system of channels from billions of cells and how it's sent it back to the next turnover in the same cells. In this case, we'd be struck by the system of arteries, veins and capillaries that ensures the completeness of this process. And we'd witness how badly these vessels are damaged due to the composition of the water with inorganic chemicals. If you look more closely, you can see how they are covered with calcium carbonate and its compounds, which makes them brittle. This is where the process of petrification of the body begins. If we could only see how they damage the arteries, we'd definitely follow all the advice given in this book. Remember, we're young as our arteries. When we don't care of the body, the nervous system also suffers. If we could look inside ourselves, we would see the digestive tract, where the transformation of the eaten food and liquid is carried out, as a result of which we can receive the contents of salads, nuts, raw and cooked vegetables, as well as other food products that are converted into substances necessary cells that they can use. In such a self-observation experiment, a person whose diet consists of dead, devitaminated food would be able to see how badly processing in this tract of a fried sausage sandwich, ice cream, pies and the like, which causes damage to the digestive tract, is bad for his body. If we could observe the largest organ of the body, sugary drinks and alien food, we would be able to see how inorganic chemicals that get inside with water inflict devastating blows on us. Unfortunately, these substances get into the water not only because of the activities of people, but also nature itself, which sometimes enriches the water with additional components such as calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, potassium carbonate and some other additives. If we take a closer look at the liver, we will notice that some areas have become hard and like a stone. Thousands of people die from a disease known as cirrhosis of the liver or fibrosis, due to the vascular ossification due to excessive formation of connective tissue followed by compression of the liver. Liver petrification is facilitated by heavy inorganic minerals contained in the water. Conformation of the artery. When I was a teenager and lived with my parents in Virginia, several times I went with them to the Lurie limestone caves. There I observed water saturated with limestone, creating stalactites and stalagmites. Spending thousands of years on these works using such an instrument as a drop of water, nature slowly creates huge heaps of inorganic minerals. The same process takes place in the body, in which the building material is calcium carbonate and other minerals that are always present in drinking water. And calcium carbonate or lime is the most important component in the production of cement and concrete. Hard water is a catalyst responsible for the formation of solids when it enters the body and for the metabolic processes that take place over many years. It's this that is the main culprit for hardening of the arteries. Doctors call such a deteriorated condition of the arteries arteriosclerosis, which according to many is a natural process that accompanies a person throughout life. Such thinking can be called herd thinking, although it will be more accurate to call it an absence of thinking at all. However, some people are critical of this, refusing to accept as a fact that arteriosclerosis and dementia in old age are inevitable phenomena. Unfortunately, even the most professional doctors nowadays claim that there are practically no effective treatments for limening arteries. Recently, techniques have been developed to replace large arteries and veins with plastic conductors. Often experiments are done with the carotid artery and the jugular vein. Attempts are being made to perform surgical operations to remove inorganic deposits from the large arteries of the body. However, if you remember about the entire system through which the blood circulates in the body, then it becomes clear that such a purification gives little if we consider the change in the state of the body after such corrective actions. For the result to be noticeable, many kilometers of arteries, veins and capillaries must be cleaned. Hardening brain. The greatest danger in organic minerals as well as salt, sodium chloride and cholesterol are for the fine arteries and other channels of blood supply to the brain. Although modern science has learned to cope to some extent with insufficient functioning of the kidneys, liver, heart and other organs of the body, it can be argued that there is currently no way to restore the life of the brain after hardening. What is premature aging and dementia if not turning the brain into stone? Let's go to nursing homes and sanitariums and look at people who have lost the ability to think normally. Some of them stop recognizing their children and relatives. Others lose the ability to think. They cannot control urination, so they have to put on special diapers. Many of them are unable to eat on their own and therefore have to be fed. Even reflexive functions cease to be performed by brains. The eyes of such patients often look blankly into space. These are the living dead who are waiting for the time when they buried. I'm very sorry for these people. They are probably the most unfortunate creatures on our planet. And such a sunset is no exception. However, many people suffer from this tragedy because they have given enough time for harmful substances to turn their brains to stone. After all, hardening of arteries and calcification of blood vessels begins from the day of birth. It is from this day that we begin to introduce inorganic substances into the body. Life in modern conditions doesn't allow us to forget that in the process of cooking food, all the most useful elements contained in organic substances are removed or destroyed. My first experiences with hard water. Take a look at my life, for example. I was born in Virginia on a farm near the Potomac River. We took all the water from the well, and it was crystal clear fresh water. However, it was very tough and contained in dissolved form calcium carbonate and other inorganic minerals common to all limestones. When we boiled this water, layers of substances were deposited on the walls of the dishes, which over time caused the formation of holes in the bottoms of kettles and pots. We had to throw them away and buy new ones, but after a while they also ended up in the trash. It was very difficult to wash dishes, wash clothes, etc. using this water. The soap didn't wash in it. However, the main danger of hard water was for people who drink it. My grandfather was over 60. He was a tall, strong man weighing about 90 kilograms and having, despite his years, strong muscles. He was well versed in horses, was a bird hunter and worked on his farm all his life. I remember the day he had his first stroke. Our entire Bragg family sat at the dinner table. Suddenly there was a crash of plates breaking under the weight of grandfather, who fell on them with his chest. When the doctor arrived, he told us that grandfather had the stroke and his left side of his body was paralyzed. Since then, my grandfather needed constant care and attention due to the complete paralysis of the left half. He couldn't walk on his own, and therefore someone had to support him while walking. He completely lost control over the processes of his natural needs in the toilet. This helpless person began to often fall into unreasonable anger. It became very difficult to feed him as he forgot how to chew. We managed to give only liquid or pureed products. Grandpa, a very wonderful man we have known for many years, disappeared, actually died. You can imagine what responsibility and care the patient has placed on my parents and the whole family. An unhappy, helpless person dragged such an existence, it can't be called a normal life, for 3 more years. Then there was the second and the last blow, and he died physically. His body was sent to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. After the autopsy, the doctors told us that his arteries were petrified, because of which? Due to the fact that my grandfather was born on our farm and lived there all his life, constantly drinking hard water. I was still young at the time, but I remember my father telling me about the autopsy results. Then I asked him how the arteries could turn to stone. However, my father couldn't give me an exact answer. And that's when I told myself that I had to figure out why my grandfather's arteries has changed so much. I started reading books on medicine from Uncle William, our family doctor. But I couldn't find an answer to the problem that occupied me and bombarded my uncle with a bunch of questions about the causes of the desire that interested me. It took many years before I was able to get to the point and get the answers. But before that, I had to witness many of the troubles that hard water did to my family, relatives and friends. There are 7 main types of bone connections in the body that provides varying degrees of mobility. Between these elements is a transparent yellow liquid called synovial in medicine. It acts as a lubricant, allowing the bones to rotate easily relative to each other at the junction. If instead of such a liquid there are inorganic minerals that came with water and poisonous crystals, then each such movement will give in to a person with difficulty, causing pain. There are many black people working on our farm, many of whom were wonderful people. We all made up one big family together. One of them who ran the house was named Bessie Louise. She was like a deed to us, and we all loved her very much. Over time, Bessie Louise began to suffer from arthritis of the hands, knees and ankles. With each passing day, the pain became more excruciating. Sometimes she couldn't stand it and began to cry. I asked our family doctor about the causes of arthritis. I wanted to know if there was a remedy that could help our Bessie Louise, or at least relieve her suffering. Paul, we don't know why it hits people, why they suffer so much from it, and we have no medicine to help Bessie Louise. The only thing we can do for her now is to give her pain relievers. After some time, Bessie stopped getting out of the bed, suffering from constant pain, and a few years later she died before she was 65 years old. The last days were especially painful for her, and I suffered along with this unfortunate woman, not finding an opportunity to help her. Every day before going to bed, I again tried to find out a way of this impasse in which she fell. After all, we lived on a beautiful farm where there was no shortage of food. Our house was comfortable, our wonderful farm stood on the banks of the river. But how many diseases lay in wait for the people living in these wonderful places? It's possible to reduce the effect of this disease to one word: grief. Almost every day I heard my mother ask the people she met, "How is your condition today?" And almost always followed by a story about the torment experienced by her interlocutors. And I again went to my patient uncle and asked questions, the main of which was, "Why do so many people suffer from disease?" "I wish I knew," was his usual answer, which could not satisfy me. And then I said to myself, one day you will find the reason why so many people suffer from pain. I have tuberculosis. When I was 12 years old, I was sent to Virginia to school with military bias. My parents wanted me to prepare for the West Point Military Academy and become an officer. When I was little, the future of children was determined by adults, their parents. But I didn't want to be a soldier and honestly told my parents about it, but the objections didn't work on them. They said they knew better than I should be doing. I had to obey. In military school, I not only drank hard water, but also constantly ate unhealthy foods, pies, waffles, white rice, a huge amount of fried sausage, boiled and fried potatoes, meat, as well as desserts, rolls, chocolate cakes. Less than 4 years later, at the age of 16, I became a victim of tuberculosis. And I again began to fire questions at my uncle, the doctor, asking me why this time the chose fell on me. Why? But this kind person couldn't give me an answer. After that, I spent several years in various sanatoriums until my fate changed. I ended up in a hospital in New York where I was examined by 4 experienced doctors. At the first meeting, I asked them directly if they could save me. And I got an honest answer. "No," they said, "we're not sure if you can get out." When they left the ward, a nurse who had recently arrived from Switzerland for an internship was simply furious. "These American doctors don't understand anything," she said. "I'm glad that I will soon return to my sanatorium where specialists know how to deal with this disease. Will you take me with you? I want to live and help other patients." And this little girl fulfilled my request and took me to her country, where her compatriot, the greatest scientist Dr. August Roller, gave me a second birth and brought me back to life using natural means for this: distilled water, good nutrition, sunlight, fresh air, deep breathing and exercise. 2 years later, I became healthier and stronger than ever, and was ready to realize my ambitious plans to help other people help themselves. The secret of rain and snow water. Currently, many of Dr. Roller's techniques which he resorted to in the treatment of forms of tuberculosis are considered standard. However, in those days he was in many ways the discoverer of a new method and was ahead of his colleagues in some position by 200 years. Perhaps the secret of his technique is that he insisted that his patients never use hard water. Although there is a lot of water in Switzerland in different sources, Dr. Roller gave only rain or melt water. He was also an advocate of the use of fresh fruits and vegetables. Dr. Roller has always explained to us how the methods he used provide treatment for the human body. He said that almost all the water in Switzerland is hard, saturated with inorganic minerals, which don't give us anything useful. They only harm since the body can only absorb food and liquids of organic origin. I sincerely fell in love with this scientist and believed in his methods, since he gave me answers to all the questions that tormented me since childhood. Dr. Roller is one of the most wonderful people I have ever met. He revived patients who had previously been doomed to excruciating pain and early death. I was one of them. When my course of treatment was over and I was leaving, Dr. Roller warned me that I should only use rain and snow water, fruit and vegetable juices, or distilled water.